Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Property, jointly organized by JRL Singapore and JRL Malaysia. Let's Talk Property is a brand new series of episodes of which we will invite different guests on each episode to have a casual discussion on places and properties. I'm Marilyn from JRL Singapore, and I'll be your host for today's episode where the spotlight is on Cambridge. Stay on with us to find out why Cambridge is more than a university city and the reasons for investing in Cambridge. I have here with me Christine, who is leading the JRL Malaysia International Residential Team. I'm very honored to have Emma from JRL UK and Ross from Hill to join us today. Before we begin, Christine, would you like to have a few words and share with our audiences on the services which we provide?
Sure. Thank you, Marilyn. Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Wong, the head of International Residential JLL Malaysia. Before we pass the floor to Emma and Ross, I would like to introduce JLL International Residential Team, or we call it IR Team. JLL IR Team has been set up in Southeast Asia for more than 10 years with the focus in marketing overseas properties, especially UK. We have launched more than 300 UK projects, and we are so excited to work with Hill again for Nice Park. In Southeast Asia, we have offices in Singapore and Malaysia with a team of experienced sales consultants to providing exceptional consulting services, investment advice, mortgage and taxation guidance, letting and management services, after-sales customer care, valuations and resale service. I'm sure many viewers here are our existing clients. Thank you again for your continuous support, and we look forward to meeting you again soon after this session. Thank you. Back to you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Christine. We'll flash our contact details for Singapore and Malaysia at the end of the discussion. Meanwhile, please feel free to post your questions in the comment box and we will get back to you. Ideas on topics for future episodes are welcome too. Moving on to our focus today. Most of us in Southeast Asia are pretty familiar with London, but how well do we know Cambridge? Emma, perhaps you could share with us more about Cambridge and the location?
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here today, Marilyn. And clearly we're not going to cover everything there is to know about Cambridge on this episode, but we'll be able to give you a bit of a taster. This map clearly shows where Cambridge is located within the UK, and it sits about 60 miles northeast of London. So it's a really good choice for people to pick as part of that commuter city outside of London. It's a really easy train ride into London that we'll come on to next when we talk about the transport. But Cambridge itself is a fantastic city. It's known most famously for its university, but it's also a beautiful part of the country, and it really is a quintessentially English city in itself. You've got beautiful open space, you've got parks and countryside, fantastic, stunning architecture, as well as the River Cam that runs through it, that a lot of people know it for the famous river punting that you can do in Cambridge. So it's a really, really popular choice. In fact, Sunday Times did a survey recently and had it coming out as one of the most popular choices to live outside of London, and even in some cases more popular than London. In fact, about 500,000 tourists visit Cambridge every year. So that just shows you how attractive it is as a place. So it's a really, really exciting city to be talking about today.
So is it easily accessible to London in terms of transportation?
It is, Marilyn. I think from this map gives you a really good idea of how you would get to London back to and from. So you've got a train that goes every 30 minutes into London, and that's King's Cross. That's your main London terminus. And you're looking at about 53 minutes, and that will get you straight from Cambridge into London. Now, Cambridge itself offers two stations. You've got one just in the city centre itself, and there's actually going to be Cambridge South that's coming and going to be starting operation in 2025. So the fact that there's that transportation infrastructure that's being improved upon really does show you how it's becoming a popular choice for commuters. But not just the train line, you've also got the nearest airport, which would be Stansted. That's 30 minutes away. And also driving, you know, in the current situation we're in now, not a lot of people want to choose to go by train in and out of London or to the place they work, but also they want to drive. It seemed as a more comfortable solution for travelling. I've done the journey myself, in fact, from where I am just outside of London to Cambridge, and I've done it door to door in less than an hour, which on a good day with the motorways is a really good indicator of how easy it is to get to. So hopefully that gives you an idea of why it's a place, Marilyn, in terms of commuting.
Yes, I can see from the map that it's so convenient to travel into London with only about 50 minutes train ride to London's King's Cross. And our clients are mainly investors, as you know, and we all know that Cambridge is famous for the universities. But in terms of rentability, any well-known companies set up over there, what kind of tenant profile will one be expecting?
Sure. So I can answer that question in a couple of parts. I think firstly we'll cover off the fact that University of Cambridge is a massive draw to the city and probably what it's most famous for. So it's the world's fourth oldest surviving university, and it's actually ranked second in the UK, just behind Cambridge. So sorry, just behind Oxford. So it's a really important factor. And I think what's also worth noting is if you imagine coming out of Cambridge University with a degree and you're proud enough to hold that degree, you're coming into the employment and the working world with a massive asset in your back pocket by having that degree. So that carries a real gravitas to it when you're going to look for work. So the university is something we're hugely proud of, and we'll talk about that later with the project we're talking with Knights Park, which is a partnership between the two. So it's pretty unique. But putting the academia aside, as we mentioned, it's also brought in a huge amount of residents and students that study there year on year. And that's also undergraduates and postgraduates. So not just those people that are studying what they're getting out of the University of Cambridge, but they're also bringing in a massive energy and youth and real value to the city itself. Moving in terms of value into the city, we've got real I suppose global players in terms of the companies that have resided in Cambridge. And probably people don't necessarily know that although you've got that real history element to it with the university, you've also got this sort of modern world that's tended to come into Cambridge, and that's created this tech hub, this almost Silicon Valley of the UK, alongside other cities like Oxford and Reading, for instance. So this tech hub is really been brought in by these companies that you can see listed here, not just the obvious ones like Amazon, Microsoft and Apple that have used their headquarters, but also AstraZeneca, more importantly and more recently, has really put the spotlight on Cambridge, and something we're quite proud of in terms of having that recent spotlight on. So those are some of the companies, and with that you bring in the employment, you bring in those people working there, and they're going to have some really healthy salaries and income, clearly working in those types of industries. And you can see from these stats here, Marilyn, what the average across the UK is compared to Cambridge, and you're definitely going to have not just highly skilled people to rent to, but also are going to have a really stable salary. Alongside the tech hub, you've also got, which speaks for itself, the Cambridge Science Park, which is a partnership between the Cambridge University and all the businesses that reside there. You've got 130 companies, you've got 1.7 million square feet of space that's formed of research labs, as well as other partnerships and companies' research places. So 58 buildings, 152 acres. That should give you an idea of the scale of this science park. And I think if any of us get the chance to come to Cambridge, it will really show you that juxtaposition between history of the architecture you can see in Cambridge alongside the ultra modern tech industry that's come there. And that gives Cambridge such a perfect balance, if you like.
I'm sure our audience will love to travel to Cambridge if they are able to. Interestingly, I didn't know that there's actually a tech industry in Cambridge where familiar names such as Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft has a presence over there. So what is the demographic in Cambridge? Are there a young population over there?
Yeah, the demographic in Cambridge is an interesting one, as we've mentioned, and clearly you're going to have all these students living in the city. And it's actually known, I think as well, it's important, it's one of the safest cities to live in the UK. So you've got this great youthful energy of the students. You've also got this real creativity and intellect that you've got with the science and the research and the medical IT. So you've got a great cross-section of people living and working in Cambridge itself. And this sort of strength of migration makes it a real resilient and stable place to reside. But all these people, and this, as this pie chart shows, with all the sectors and what the main factors are, they've all got to be housed and looked after and accommodated. And I think something that's really important to note is there's a real lack of of supply to this demand that's in Cambridge. So that's why I think there's been a real noticeable shift of housing developers that are looking to to create these homes, and not just homes, but really good quality homes for these people that are going to want to stay. So you've got a great tenant pool, Marilyn, for your investors that are looking to potentially pick Cambridge as their next hotspot.
Right. So since you mentioned about housing, could you share with us your professional views on the property market in Cambridge, and perhaps sums up why should one invest in Cambridge?
Absolutely, and I think it's really important to note how the property market not just sits locally within these cities, but how it compares with the wider UK piece. And our research team at JLL pride themselves in looking at these smaller pieces on smaller sectors of the market. And Cambridge itself, as I mentioned, has got a massive demand, and the supply is being met gradually. But house prices therefore have actually reached some of the highest in the UK. And I think it's worth noting that the average price of a new home in Cambridge is actually 425,000. That's a pretty significant price to pay for an average. And that was taken between 2019 and 2020. So over the last 12 months, between that time frame, that's been the average of a new home. And I think Home Track as well has also stated that the property prices have really risen. We always benchmark it with financial crises and pandemics and things that we're going through. But even since then, we've seen about an 85% increase since the last financial crisis. And that's probably the highest in any other city outside of London.
So how does Cambridge sit alongside London in terms of property price growth?
Yep, and that's a great benchmark, Marilyn, for all I think our investors and our clients that we talk to that want to take property as an option in the UK. They always want to know, how is it comparing to London? This graph shows that, I think, quite clearly. As you can see, if you focus in on those yellow and red lines, the red being Cambridge and the yellow being London, you're effectively mirroring each other. So the two markets, if you like, are running in parallel with each other, and that really should give some comfort, I think, to any investor to know that Cambridge is following the same pattern that we're seeing in London. In terms of annual growth and how we're seeing that, it's always something we have to keep monitoring in the current climate, but certainly on an annual increase for Cambridge, we're looking at about 5.4. If we look a little bit further down the line, at 5 years, roughly about 17%. So a really healthy property market that we can demonstrate to our investors in Cambridge. Rounding all of that, key reasons we've covered off, and obviously we'd love to cover them all each in their own sort of detail, but we've tried to give a bit of a snapshot summary. So looking at those we've pulled out here, we've got a fantastic property market in itself that's got a great demand, that the supply is being met. You've got the world leading university piece. So in terms of education, I think people will always look to invest in London, within the UK itself, not just London, but clearly now Cambridge as well. You've got these fantastic employers that are within Cambridge itself that that have highlighted some of the global players that have invested into the area, which always give you that comfort. If they believe in it, then I think every person should also believe in it. And finally, the rental market, that great pool of people that need to find homes to live and work and stay in Cambridge for the medium to long term.
Right. So with all these reasons you have mentioned, I guess our audiences are curious now. Is there a case study which we could present for clients who might be interested to invest in Cambridge?
Absolutely, and this is the part we're hugely excited about to get on to next. We're going to show you a short video, and then we're going to introduce Ross Fleming, who's the International Sales Manager at Hill. He'll be able to give us a brief overview of Knights Park, which is a scheme that JLL have been successful in selling this year so far. And we're sure that it will continue to prove really, really popular. So without going on any further, I'll let the video run and people can get a bit of a snapshot, and then we'll let Ross do his part. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Emma. And thank you very much, JLL, for hosting this fantastic live stream. So just to give you a bit of background about Knights Park, our development with Hill is actually situated in Eddington, Cambridge. And historically, Eddington was actually farmland of the University of Cambridge. So that area you see there in the picture was actually farmland previously, and was a vision of the University of Cambridge to create this new university district, which Hill have helped realise and bring to fruition with our development, Knights Park. It was actually named Eddington, this new university district, following from a very famous University of Cambridge alumnus, which is Sir Arthur Eddington, who was an astronomer, mathematician and physicist, who then actually lived in the local area. And Eddington is basically 50 hectares of open space, 100,000 square meters of research and development facilities are based there. It has architecturally award-winning buildings such as the Stories Field Community Centre, and Eddington Estate is actually managed by the University of Cambridge Estate Management Company as well. And as I mentioned, it is part of a new university district which actually has zero affordable housing in Eddington itself. And as you can see from the map just there, it's located just 1.9 miles away northwest of the city centre, which is about 12 minutes by bike, and right into the centre of Cambridge. There is also a University of Cambridge bus running every 15 minutes, taking to the university campuses and also the city centre. And there are many cycle routes running from Eddington all the way through to the city. Going into the actual Eddington itself, as you can see here, there is this vibrant and buzzing market square. There's a health centre, children's play area, tennis courts, sports fields, Sainsbury's supermarket, a car club, as I mentioned, also the shuttle bus service. So there's lots happening within Eddington itself. Included is a brand new hotel coming to Eddington, which is the Hyatt Hotel, which is going to offer guests a guest gym, rooftop bar, open to the public as well, which will be coming later this year, around about September 2021. Obviously, one of the big things about Cambridge is its education. Now, actually located in Eddington is the University of Cambridge Primary School, which is just 5 minutes walk away from Knights Park. And this is Ofsted rated as outstanding, and you have pretty much a guaranteed entry to residents who are within this catchment area at Knights Park. And amongst this, there are obviously a number of other fantastic schools and colleges, and obviously it would be crazy not to mention the University of Cambridge, so close by, only 5 minutes drive away. So Knights Park itself is basically a mixture of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments and 3 and 4 bedroom houses, and prices starting from just under £370,000. It's a mixture of completion dates, so we have some completed homes now, along with running through to 2023, so there is off-plan opportunities as well. Now, the homes at Knights Park are extremely sustainable and very modern. As you can see from the pictures here, they are all EPC grade A rated. It is also boasting the largest rainwater reharvesting system in Europe as well for that sustainability aspect. And here's a fantastic cut through of the actual a typical property here at Knights Park. It comes with triple glazed windows for fantastic insulation, huge extra large windows as well for extra light coming in, solar panels to all houses on the roof, smart meters, MVHR heat recovery system, electric car charging points. So as you can see here, it is extremely modern and very sustainable, and actually has won quite a number of awards, including awarded Best Sustainable Development in the National Award in 2019 for the Watt House Awards, and also winner of the Eco Living Award at the Evening Standard New Homes Awards in 2019. And these homes are extremely high specifications and are modern throughout, as you can see in the pictures here as well. It really does come with the highest level of finish, which includes integrated appliances, both Bosch and Siemens, quartz worktops, underfloor heating throughout, engineered wood flooring, Hansgrohe bathroom wear, just to name a few of the aspects of this development. Now, what is very, very clear with this fantastic build quality and specification, along with the local amenities that I've already mentioned and the general demand in Cambridge due to the aforementioned factors such as education, global corporations, and demand outstripping supply by quite some way, we are seeing some fantastic rental and investor opportunities. And just showing on here, you can see that an 8% increase in rent has taken place over the last 3 years, and with a 3% average annualized growth in one-bedroom apartments over the last 5 years as well. So a very healthy sort of growth and investment opportunity there for sure. And we're generally seeing average gross rental yields of around about 4%. As you can see here, slightly higher on the one beds at 4.4% and just under 4% on the two beds. And a great example of this is actually the Oak Building at Knights Park at Eddington, which was retained by Hill as a rental investment, which consisted of around about 32 apartments, which were all let off plan within a 2-week period late in 2019 to professionals and corporate tenants, just to give you an idea of the fantastic rental and investment opportunity this presents. Back over to you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Ross, for your presentation on Knights Park, and good to know that the apartments and houses are giving healthy rental yield. Just a couple of questions for you before we end the discussion. Could you share with us on the buyer's profile for Knights Park?
Sure, Marilyn, not a problem at all. So we're seeing a great mix of buyer profiles. Approximately about a third are international buyers, and the remainder is to local buyers itself. And we're seeing a really high demand of people working in London as well, moving out to get more space, as Emma previously mentioned, but also to be within that short distance to the capital. A lot of the sort of professional buyers are in the education, medicine, pharmaceutical and tech backgrounds. And generally there is a quite high level of buyers associated with the University of Cambridge itself, or alumni as well. And a clear driver is obviously the demand to the top schools and colleges and university in the area.
Right. So based on your experiences, what will be your recommendation on the type of homes for an overseas investor?
That's a very tough question. I would suggest them all fantastic. However, obviously we are seeing interest in both apartments and houses. However, I'm seeing a real shift in the sort of demand for houses. Being in a more rural area with more space, and the fact that the houses are freehold, come with parking spaces, and coupled with, like I said, this recent trend for wanting outdoor space and people being able to work from home, we are seeing this demand for houses. A really highly sought after example of one of these house types is the Huxley House, which has a fantastic layout, really high spec, and sustainability, which can actually reduce your running costs by up to 50%. And as I mentioned earlier as well, it is freehold, so that has a huge demand as well.
Thanks for sharing your recommendation with us. Absolutely, we do see a buying trend for bigger units due to the shift in work culture, as what Emma and Ross has mentioned earlier. People prefer a bigger living space as they work from home more often. Well, we may not have the time to cover everything during this short 30-minute session. So if you have any further questions on Cambridge or Knights Park, please feel free to reach out to our team in Singapore and Malaysia. We have come to the end of today's episode. Special thanks to Emma and Ross for taking time off to share with us about Cambridge and Knights Park. To our attendees, thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, we would love to gather your suggestions on topics we would like to see in future discussion. Please keep your comments coming in. Thank you all for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next episode of Property Talk. Bye.